you, Chairman. So we have apologies from Councillor Roger Jackson for medical illness, and Councillor Richard Butler is here today to substitute for him. And we also have apologies from Councillor Dave Shaw for other reasons.
Thank you. Welcome, Richard. Enjoy it. Agenda item 3, declarations of interests. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Does that sound really tinny?
Yeah, maybe just push it back.
Oh, better. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. Okay. None. Okay. With my chairman's indulgence, I'm changing the order of the agenda, just tweaking it slightly. So I'm going to bring agenda item 5, which is the annual delivery plan, and that's gone now. Let's on to the next step. So I'm going to ask Councillor Bruce Lawton, the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Transformation and Change, to introduce a report. Bruce.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for changing the agenda. I've got personal issues I've got to be able to sort out. So, as the summary, this is the annual delivery plan and assurance and next steps. The Q2 assurance covering the period of July to September 24. And it provides an opportunity for the committee and members to track the progress in the year against the actions that we set ourselves in the annual delivery plan 24-25. We have quarterly milestones under each of the actions outlined in the plan, and these help us understand if we are on track in the year. Good progress is being made against these, with 82% of the milestones on track for completion. The report gives examples of what we have already delivered in 24-25. These include development of an integrated mental health pathway strategic plan 24 to 27, something that is extremely important and very close to my heart. The launching of the bereavement and related support web pages, continued rollout of the new family networks, which is a major aim of this administration, and is already starting to have a considerable impact in the areas where they've opened, reducing our demand for both adults and young people services. Investment in the electric buses and charging infrastructure, and further reductions in the council greenhouse gas emissions. And that will obviously help with the opening of Newcastle House, which is a net zero building. Where there are issues with delivery in the year, we monitor these closely with the accountable officers across the council to ensure that the relevant actions are being taken to overcome the barriers and make progress at pace. Further details can be found in the report attached as in Appendix A. I move the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Yeah, it's a great report. It's very full and comprehensive. I'm just going to ask Lucy Peel, the Director of Public Service Reform, if you have anything further to add before I open it up. No? I think Bruce covered most of it. Yeah. He usually does that. Okay. I'm going to move the recommendations and ask for a second.
Seconded.
Okay, and now open it up if any other councillors have any questions. Councillor. Oh, Councillor Francis. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm referring to page 50, ambition 6. Presumably, this is will be a glossy publication, and on that particular page, there's a lovely photograph of county councillors, along with the chairman and Newark councillor Keith Girling, with the former leader And there's a picture of a new sculpture called the Scrooby Rock, which was unveiled in Scrooby, I see, to commemorate the 1620 voyage of the Mayflower. And this sculpture, which I presume has had the support of all the Conservative group on this council, this sculpture was over £37,000, which was given a grant by this council, Nottinghamshire County Council, along with other contributions. Yet, when Newark and Sherwood District Council revealed plans last year to spend public money on moving sculptures to its site by a famous Nottinghamshire sculptor, Robert Kiddie, it was branded really disappointing and a complete waste of money by senior members who of this county council, including Councillor Girling and Ben Bradley, and the hokey cokey councillor, independent stroke Conservative, whenever he feels like it, Councillor John O'Lee. Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, can I ask the Cabinet member, is there a limit on what is considered to be reasonable to spend on sculptures, and do you feel that this opens up councillors to accusations of hypocrisy? Thank you.
Bruce, you want to pick? Yeah.
Thank you very much. There is no limit as such. This decision was made by the previous administration, not by this administration, and therefore I'm unable to comment on what anybody's views on that particular issue. And this is not Newark and Sherwood District Council. This is Nottinghamshire County Council. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fold.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. I just wanted to ask a more general question, I hope, to Lucy about the transformation, and thanks for all the briefings and all that you share with us. You think you're doing a really good job, and I know it's hard, but I think it's great, some of the stuff you're doing. So I just wanted to ask a more general question, and that is, it seems very clear, I think, to most of us now that actually there are probably better ways of actually delivering some of the services to help protect the service for our residents and give them a better service that's kind of more tailored to their needs, which is great. So how do you feel in terms of the transformation at this council? How, in general terms, do you think it's going? And do you think enough resource and enough buy-in is there so you can actually kind of make it happen at a reasonable pace?
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Councillor Fowl. So I think we've got a really strong commitment and understanding of what we need to do in order to both improve residents' outcomes and seek to achieve financial sustainability, which I guess links to the other discussion item this morning around the budget report. So we know that many of our challenges from a financial perspective relate to our services for vulnerable people, whether that's vulnerable children, vulnerable adults. And I think you can see through the delivery of the plan that some really strong progress has been made in rolling out initiatives, particularly to support, whether that's supporting vulnerable children through family hub networks or taking different approaches to supporting young people on the edge of care. And then in the adult social care context, thinking about how to provide care and support to adults, which enables them to use technology to support care, for example. So I think there's a really strong platform to build on. I think there's more that we can do both within our own services, but also with our public sector partners to make sure that we're providing support in the most joined up way possible, and really making sure that we're focusing on those people where whose needs escalate to require more expensive statutory support. So I think, as I say, the foundations are there. We have further work we can do to make sure that we're really focusing the programme on the areas where we can both achieve impact for people and indeed for the budget.
Could you just say, could you just kind of address kind of the buy-in thing, and how do you think the employees, kind of the senior leaders and the wonderful staff that work for this organisation, how do you think they're buying into this? Do you think they understand it? Do you think they get it? Do you think they value it? And are they prepared to kind of to make this kind of changes that might kind of come their way?
So yes, I think certainly from an employee perspective, I think we've got a great workforce who are really committed to making things better for the people that they support. I think through the portfolio we've got examples of where that's done really well. So for example, work around the front door within children and families. So changing the way that the council and its partners respond to initial concerns raised. I think as ever, what with the national context in terms of the reform that's coming through government. So we know that there is reform coming for children's social care, for example. Actually, that gives us a real opportunity to push forward further, build on the work that's already been done. So what we need to do is make sure that we put in place structures which enable people to both innovate, generate ideas, whilst also maintaining, the really important role they do every day, caring and supporting people. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucy. Bruce, do you want to come back?
Yeah, if I may add, Kate, first of all, I'd like to thank Lucy and all the team for the work that's going on. There is no doubt within the transformation agenda that there are areas that we can do better, and that is picked up in our performance data that is coming through. And I also like to pay my thanks to the finance department, because we're regularly in dialogue with them and the monitoring of some of the areas of concern within the authority. There is no doubt that we have a more challenge in adults, and we're working on that to be able to try to improve the situation and improve demand. And that is to a certain extent where some of the family hubs are coming in, already opening up to try and make some impact on the demand that we are receiving, particularly within adults. We are making considerable inroads into children. You can see that by the numbers. The numbers of children in care is flatlining, whereas a lot of other authorities have got significant issues where that is concerned. But we do have areas within the council where we have further work to do, and that is ongoing, and we recognise that, and Lucy is dealing with and coming up with innovative solutions to be able to deal with those areas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, pleasure. Thank you for adding that. Councillor Introna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the report. I just want to focus on a couple of things, if I may. Ambition 2, Ambition 3, supporting communities and families, keeping children, vulnerable adults and communities safe. Certainly, as I've had a year now as chairman of the Children and Families Select Committee, and I've got to say I've been pleasantly stunned, bewildered, humbled. I can't find words to describe what I see when I see the officers and the staff involved from Nottinghamshire County Council that are out there trying to look after our children, trying to protect those children and help families to better provide for themselves and better provide for their children. It really has been a humbling experience. Within the committee itself, I'd like to thank Councillor Perdue-Horan and Councillor Anne Callaghan, who are the two leads from each group, in terms of how we work together. The committee works together well. It's completely apolitical, and we focus entirely on delivering what's best for children and families in our county. And so I just want to say thank you to Bruce, to Lucy, to Colin, to all the people that are there helping, because it is truly an astonishing group of people. Just quickly, if I may, Bassett Law's 400th anniversary celebrations with regard to the Pilgrim's initial journey to the New World. There was consensus from all authorities. Bassett Law District Council is a Labour-controlled authority, and all the councillors within Bassett Law, all 57 of them, I think, there was unanimity about how we progressed, because what we did and what they did was a good idea, and there was common agreement that it was a good idea because it was a good idea. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Is there anything come from no recommendations? Everyone happy? and no one else wants to have a go. No. Okay. Take a vote on those recommendations. Show of hands. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you, Bruce, and thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much. If you want to, you can stay with us by all means if you want, but you've got to go. I know, Bruce. So safe journey, mate. Okay, so we'll go back to agenda item 4, the big ticket item, the one everyone's been waiting for. And I'll ask Councillor Richard Jackson, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, to introduce the report. Richard,
thank you, Chairman. Members will be familiar with this stage of the budget setting process, and I think most of you have been here before. The biggest change in the report since the last time we came in front of this committee back in, I think it was November, is we've had the local government finance settlement. Colleagues will recall Council in December debated a motion and passed a motion calling on government to fund the costs of the Chancellor's autumn budget of £34 million of cost pressures it put on the council with national living wage and national insurance changes, amongst other things. That hasn't been reflected in the provisional local government finance settlement, unfortunately. However, we've updated the MTFS, which is in the report, and we now move on in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks today, to the Cabinet meeting, which will then propose the final budget to council. The piece that's missing in this report is obviously any council tax increase. It's a decision that's yet to be made, and that'll be made in reflection of the outcome, amongst other things, of this meeting this morning. So happy to listen and to answer any questions along with the service director that members may have.
Thank you, Richard. Nigel, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or do you want to see what arises?
If I may,
of course, yeah. Come in. No problem.
Thank you to. I'm also grateful for Councillor Jackson. A couple of bits for me is we've had the provisional local government settlement, but we've not had the final local government settlement, and there's an element of a grant still waiting an announcement, which is the support to local government around the impact of the changes to the national insurance contributions from an employer point of view. So, and that probably we won't find that final local government settlement won't be until the middle of February. So beyond even the discussion that Cabinet will have in a couple of weeks' time around the budget. We have had an update because the deadline for the 15th of January around the collection fund and the tax base. Unfortunately, there is a deficit on the collection fund in the accumulated collection funds across the district and borough councils of £1 million, which we'll have to reflect further when it comes to the budget discussions in February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Richard. Just before I open it up, I'm going to move the recommendations as set out in the bundle and ask for a seconder.
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Okay, so just to remind members, it's not budget debate, it's the budget update, this one, so we're going to debate on this paper. Okay, I've got Councillor Creamer signal first. Thank you.
Thank you. Bullet point 5758, the future options and reserves. Just wonder what it says in an appropriate level of reserves. I'm just wondering what appropriate levels of reserves are and how flexible that may or may not be. And as well, specifically, do you have any examples of any? Let me get this right, so my right is terrible. So the risk-based. Have you an example of the risks that may or may not be taken? And what is the safe level of reserves? So how flexible is this, and what do you consider to be a safe level?
Thank you, Jim. So that's so risks and level of reserves, please.
They are very much a 151 officer function, and we take on board Nigel's experience in this. So Nigel,
that's yours, Nigel.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, reserves. We'll hold reserves for a couple of reasons. One, as you quite rightly say, Councillor Creamer, around managing risk. And I'll come on to those in a minute in terms of those sort of risks that we sort of look at and assess. But in terms of what reserves are also there is to help the authority in terms of releasing some of those reserves in terms of cushioning the blow of, let's face it, we've been in austerity since 2008, and we've been using reserves, feeding them in to help the authority still meet the demands at the front that was required, particularly in children's and adult social care services, but it's the right thing to do to use reserves rather than just holding on to them just for the sake of just holding on to them. So you should be releasing them when you have, and that has been our strategy. If I come back then in terms of the risks, I would refer colleagues back to February 24th budget and an appendix that maybe people just skip over quite easily, which is Appendix C, which sets out what those around the risks around reserves and why we do them, why we use them, and why it's the professional judgment of the 151 officer about the level of reserves and sufficiency. Because it's around the not just next year's budget in terms of is that right, but also around the MTFS, because we have to get to a position of not a balanced budget of the MTFS, but a plan in terms of using reserves, managing risks, and also looking for savings in future years, because there is always a gap, a funding shortfall. But we also have to look at specific reserves that the department have that we manage for specific purposes, and the general fund balance. And I won't go on to the specific reserves because some of those are grant reserves for specific purposes. If we don't use them, we have to give them back to the grant body. But the general fund balance is the one where we do an assessment of risk. And there's a separate table in there because we moved away in 2014 from this concept of it's 5% or it's 4% to a risk-based assessment. And that's why I'm particularly keen to actually stress that's how we do that. And we'll look at things around funding streams in terms of do we make an assessment that the government funding stream, because 1 year settlements doesn't help us with what future risks may be. So we'll make an assessment about how much money should we hold in a general fund balance to cater for fluctuations in funding levels in future years. Same with around inflation. So there'll be an assessment around general inflation based on general running costs, and is it a medium, high or low risk? That's the sort of thing we'll go. It'll be around savings, it'll be about particular core activities, particularly think around adult social care, where we made an assessment last year about holding 6 million of that reserve to cater for a potential risk about increasing demand coming in. And then it's just about monitoring in year in terms of those risks and where we are with the budget and the ups and downs with funding in terms of how we manage risk and where we use the general fund balance. Hopefully that explains in terms of some of those risks and how we manage them.
Thanks for that. So this year, what is going to be the accepted level of reserves, or is that plus or minus a few percent? I know we've gone away from we have to have reserves of X, but just wondered what the level it will be.
As I said, we don't just do a blanket percentage. We'll try and break down individual risks and make an assessment against those individual risks and then measure against them. And that will determine the amount of money that I think we need to hold in a general fund balance to meet that risk going forward. And you add all that together and it will come to a number. That way, rather than just it's 5% or it's 4%. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to pick up on a point that was made by Mr. Stevenson when he talked about the impact of the budget. And there was specific reference to national insurance and the effect of the increased national insurance charges to this authority. I got the impression from what he said that the extra money that we were getting from government this year at the moment did not cover all of those additional increases as a result of in particular, the national insurance contributions. And it would be helpful, well, I would find it useful and interesting to know what the current gap might be. And I'm surprised that he's so uncertain because as I pointed out at Broxtowe the other night, when I listened, and I mustn't call her Rachel from accounts because I get into trouble for that, as opposed to Nigel from accounts. Rachel from accounts, when she announced her budget, I was on holiday and listened to it intently. And she said quite clearly, local authorities will not have to bear any of the cost of the increase. So we can surely expect, if it's being done in tranches, that by the time you get your final settlement, your final notification, that what we get will cover all of the increase. Otherwise, somebody's telling porkies. But I would like to know what the deficit, the gap is at the moment, please.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Nigel, from accounts.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Yeah, when I talked about the NIC bit, that was us as an employer, because there's two aspects to this you have to remember, is the NIC implications on our suppliers, and particularly, as Councillor Jackson alluded to, for the social care market, where that could be a significant amount. And we've had a small increase in the social care grant, as you can see on page 23, around the table around paragraph 55, but that no way covers the significant increase, because we're looking at about 30 odd million increase, we believe, in national living wage and NIC contributions on our adult social care providers, but the grant has only gone up 12 million. So you know that's just not covering it. As an employer, their calculations come out at 4.7, and that you'll see on table 3 on that page 23. Now, the assumption at the moment is the government has indicated 515 million will be allocated to local government to cover the NIC consequences. And I'm aware that the LTO have already announced that there's no way go towards the full cost. Unfortunately for the government, not all of the data for the working out the formula for the distribution has actually been provided. So some authorities haven't been able to provide their financial data in time for the settlement for the provisional. Hopefully, they will be able to provide that data that allows us to know. But our provisional estimate is only 2 million will come our way from that grant. So we'll be 2.7 million shy of meeting the increased cost that we have as an employer from those changes to the NIC contributions.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Philip? Thank you. My Vice Chair.
Yeah, just two questions. One around bullet point 17 and the other around bullet point 18. First on bullet point 17, where it mentions we're moving money to the right places and offering increased financial security for the rest of the MTFS. I just wondered if you could give us any examples of where you're moving money to and from and those services that will be affected by that. And then the other bit is obviously where you talk about we're confident that we have a plan to navigate these challenges, and that's regarding the financial pressures. I just wondered, wouldn't it be a good idea, that plan came here so that we could scrutinise it? And it probably would have been better if the plan was in here now, because that would have given us a better opportunity working around the budget.
Richard, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose of this meeting, so the purpose of the budget, the cabinet meeting in 2 weeks' time, really, is to go into the detail of that sort of thing. The purpose of this really is to lay out what the issues are, sort of what the building blocks are for the budget, and take comments and recommendations from this as a scrutiny committee to feed into that. So we'll have the finished budget proposals in 2 weeks' time. I think that was rather than mirror this debate in 2 weeks' time at the cabinet meeting, to take proposals from you as a scrutiny committee today.
Nigel. Yeah.
If I may, in terms of the specific question around where money has gone into, yeah, you'll see that on page 22 when we pick out specific examples. It's all set out in the appendix in terms of where the additional money we're having to put in, and you'll see the vast majority of it, if not all of it, is in those people services areas. Some of it is to meet the extra demand, and I think that's set out in a bit more detail in terms of the growth in looked after children numbers. And it isn't necessarily the growth in the numbers, it's the increase in the cost that we're facing. But the same goes with adult social care, and particularly the impacts of the national living wage. I thought it'd be good for you to see that in more detail so you can get into that. But the full detail in terms of where those extra monies, you'll see none of that is going into what you would call the support services or the enabling functions. It is all targeted at those front end services that are required from the residents of Nottinghamshire.
So
I'll accept what you're saying, although I could disagree and say, really, we ought to have had a bit more detail here so that we could scrutinise it properly. So what we can expect to see then is a plan of some sort presented that tells us clearly, basically, the challenges that they are and your ways of dealing with that. If I may, the annual delivery plan that the council agreed will be in March, I think, is the plan, Lucy, I think. So we are building the budget in line with the annual delivery plan, so you can see they're tied up. But we've been striving our hardest to actually get the annual delivery plan and the budget to be delivered at the same time, so you can see that. But when you see the two documents in terms of the budget and the annual delivery plan, you'll see how they tie up in terms of where the additional budget is going to improve the services for the residents of Nottinghamshire.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Welcome report, and I understand, Richard, that it's not the budget. That's for another place and another time. However, there's one or two things I'd like to point out. I noticed that on paragraph 60 that we're actually having now to combine the council tax increase with the preset for adult social care as one, which I think is far more transparent than what it was before, because I'm not getting at you here. It was very, very convenient for the government to say, actually, you know, we haven't got any more money we can give you for adult social care, but we'll let you increase your council tax. Thank you very much for that. And when we're talking about budgets, there's some people in this room who've got very, very short memories. Yes, it was a notorious budget, was Rachel Reeves, but so was, what was her name? Liz Truss. So some people have very, very short memories, but that's another matter. We paid 46%, probably just over 46% of our total spend on adult social care and health, and we provide an excellent job under very, very difficult circumstances. And we've been waiting for years and years and years, a bit like the Fair Funding Review. We've been waiting for years and years and years for a Royal Commission to decide what on earth we're going to do with adult social care, because we've had the Integrated Care Board established. Now, to me, just appears to have been a very expensive name change, because it hasn't really made much of a difference to the hospital situation and care. And until we get that and accept that, is adult social care and that sort of care in the right place in local government, or should it be aligned to the health service, which I think it should be? Then we're going to be in the same situation. So one question, Richard, would you welcome a Royal Commission to look at the whole of this situation? Then, of course, we do mention, this is the first time I think as a council we've been able to discuss this, and that's the local government reorganisation. So thank you for putting it in the notes, because it allows me to mention it. So it would appear that the new government, having previously said that it didn't really think that local government reorganisation was a good thing, is now coming out and saying that they want to get rid of all the districts and boroughs, and they want to get rid of the counties and split them up into smaller units of 500 in the medium term, actually states to me that the people that have made that decision have never been a local councillor and understand the machinations of how difficult a job this will be. It's not 1972, which was the last time we did it. It's a very, very different situation now. And it actually, I don't think they realise what they've done, because we've got top wig hay. There's probably some doubt over that now. I'm expecting, and I have to say, officers at Broxtowe are expecting a moratorium on spend in the run-up to these changes. And that puts at risk a new leisure centre at Bramcote, which Broxtowe Council are planning. And I don't think people up there in government have understood what they've done. And of course, you ask anybody where I live, do you want to be part of a greater Nottingham city? I tell you what, almost unanimously, the answer would be no, we don't. So I'm sure that you've been having discussions, Richard, about this, and if you can, as best as possible, ask. But I'm sure you may not have been given this detail. Will any new authority that incorporates the present boundaries of Nottingham City be burdened with their debt and their problems? What do you think? Because if that's the case, anybody that knocks on doors between now and May, from either the Conservative or Labour Party saying we support this move, you're going to get badly beaten, especially in Broxtowe, Ashfield, Gedling and Rushcliffe. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's more of a question for the leader of the City Council rather than Richard, isn't it? Richard, do you want to come back at those?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, on adult social care, of course, we've got clarity and changes, and above all else, additional funding. We're not. You said we're waiting for this. For these changes, we're not waiting, and we're getting on with transforming. And Lucy talked already earlier on in the previous item about changes we're making in adult social care, and there's a lot of innovation going on there. So, whilst we are waiting to find out the results of, or even when we're going to get this review that government's now talking about being at least 3 years away, we're not waiting to get on with the job of improving and transforming services, and it's a great deal to do with early interventions and prevention than it is to do with actually delivering the service. As far as local government reorganisation goes, I would hope you've seen what the leader of the council has been saying about fighting tooth and nail to keep the existing boundaries between the city and the county intact, and I think that's perfectly sensible. You and I won't agree on the future of district councils because we've disagreed on it in the past, but I haven't changed my view, and I don't expect you to change yours. But I think it's an expensive and an outdated system. I think it is high time that it was changed, and that all those extra costs of bureaucracy are actually spent on delivering services for residents. But no doubt there'll be a chance to argue about that in the future, Steve. But it needs to be done as soon as possible. What we don't need is stagnation and years of spending moratoriums in districts would be no good for anybody.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Carr, are you happy with that?
Yeah, just come back on that. We're always going to disagree on boroughs and districts. I'll say that as a dual-hatted person. But I have to say that I don't hold out much hope for the leaders' desire to keep the city and county boundaries the same, because the government have already said that they want it as an optimum of 500,000, and that just doesn't work on the present boundaries, because the city council have got about 350,000 and the county, well, anywhere between 800 and 900,000, which is too big. So it's likely to be either split in two, or some of it may even go over into Derbyshire authorities. I don't know. This is the situation. And let's not forget that it's already been said that this isn't necessarily going to take place in this Parliament. It could be by the end of the next Parliament. And the ones at the back of the list are places like us, who have got elected mayors and a combined authority, because they've already got a structure started. Which is why I think that Derbyshire's application to delay its vote in May will be rejected. We've kept ours because we know here that it's not going to be quick in Nottinghamshire. So that is why I'm concerned about the stagnation effect of it and what that effect that's going to have. More on probably boroughs and districts than it's going to do on the county, on plans for redevelopment, plans for building houses, plans for replacing leisure centres. And I just think that this, like a lot of things that have come out from the new government and the previous government, just haven't been thought through.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'm going to bring Councillor Purdy-Horan in. Your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment and suggestion relates to recommendation 1A, really, considering the assumptions that underpin the development of the annual budget report. I refer to page 18, paragraph 37, regarding the participants in the budget survey. And it is disappointing, and and I don't lay the blame on the efforts of the council to engage with residents. It is disappointing, though, that we only got 3,500 replying. One of my favourite journalists, Andrew Neil, would probably describe that as a rounding error. So it's not actually giving us a true reflection of what the people of Nottinghamshire think. And my suggestion, because this is not a scientifically controlled, you know, survey that we would expect polling organisations to adhere to. May I suggest, because in over 25 years of talking to residents, I have never come across any resident that supports an increase in council tax. They may be resigned on occasion to expecting at least an inflationary increase at the minimum, but certainly not support. I just feel that some of the language used in describing the budget survey is misleading, shall we say. And my suggestion would be that engage councillors. I know many councillors who knock on doors and talk to residents, and they would bring just as relevant responses. I appreciate at the moment some of my previous colleagues may deliver a leaflet and then run away. And I hear on the grapevine that Labour activists are absolutely refusing to go out and knock on doors. But there are other councillors, independents in particular, who would be able to pick up genuinely relevant information that the council could use. Like I said, this isn't a tightly controlled scientific survey that polling companies would use. But I think you would get a better response than 3,500 and a more inclusive result than perhaps what's coming to Cabinet year on year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. But I think there is a question there.
Yeah, if I may, sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Jackson. When we did this review, it's responding to a review by Scrutiny from the previous year that actually looked at how we could improve the numbers, particularly engaging with younger, the youth really of the county in terms of getting responses. But it still continued to go with asking members, knowing that the survey was there to generate the responses. So I wasn't aware, Councillor Purdy-Horan, that you weren't aware that the ask was there for you to help encourage residents to actually complete the survey.
Yeah, come back.
On the few occasions I've asked if they've received or were aware of a survey, all I've ever received is a negative response that they weren't aware.
Did you complete the survey?
And yes, I have encouraged people to.
And you completed it yourself?
I've never completed the survey because I've always assumed that as a councillor deciding on the budget, that would preclude me from giving an objective answer, let's say.
Councillor Fogg. Sorry for disturbing.
Yeah, thank you. That's a bit of a weird one. I thought you'd been in an ideal position to respond to the survey, to be honest. You know, anyway, we won't go there. Just something else as well. Does any councillor deliver a leaflet through a door and run away? I mean, that seems really weird. I mean, don't we want? I mean, I think, as far as I can see, all councillors, certainly Labour ones do. No reason to expect others to do. They want to hear what people are thinking. It's part of the point about being out on the street, isn't it? Really. But anyway, there you go. That's certainly not my experience. Just to talk about the one-year settlement, I think it's quite understandable that Labour, not been in government for the best part of 14 years, did a one-year settlement first time around. But my understanding is that they intend to do longer term settlements after that. So I think that's something that clearly is going to be addressed. Just a quick one about the national living wage as well, just to remind you that throughout the whole of the Conservatives in power, they never funded the national living wage. So I think to suggest now that the Labour Party ought to be doing that and they're not is disingenuous. If you didn't mean that, Richard, I apologise, but that's how it came across to me. Okay, right. Sorry. So I'm now going to talk on this on this paper. If that's all right. Okay. I'm always very concerned about inequalities impact statements, and I see it's paragraph 74 that has been done, but it is going to be done by a high level, at corporate level. I think we should see this at the scrutiny committees. I really think we should. I'm sometimes I'm very kind of concerned about the impact of some of what we're having to do, or one of the things we choose to do, and I'm not entirely convinced that the equality impact statement actually seriously has any kind of impact on decisions that are being made, and that concerns me. But if we saw the equality impact statement, we would know that, wouldn't we? So to kind of buy into that, I noticed that it's on page 25, paragraph 64, which mentions an ancillary levy of 2 million across departments, and that directly links to me about my concern about equality impact, because is this going to be across all departments? Is it going to be across adult social care, for example? I mean, this could be really, really serious for some departments, and I know we've been in discussions with kind of some of the corporate directors quite recently, and they're very concerned about levies being applied right the way across the department. So I just do wonder how this levy is going to be applied, because I think it's really worrying that we haven't, and we would like the detail of that. I think as well, going back to what Councillor Clearforward was just saying, I think it would be really useful as well, because transformation kind of runs through the report. It's mentioned quite a big time in the annual delivery plan. It would be really nice to actually see in a bit more detail that's costed across the board what the overall transformation strategy really is, so we could scrutinise that across the board.
Thank you, Kate. Before I pass it over, we'll take that as a recommendation from this then about the equality impact assessment coming. We can do something to scrutiny.
Yeah, just while as well, we're thinking. I was just thinking that, just thinking about perhaps when we're doing scrutiny, that probably one of the things that we ought to access. I know we've said before about ombudsman reports and things like that. Looking at what they say about service areas, we ought to probably look at some of the impact equality assessments that have been done, so you can sort of say, well, that was said at that particular point in time, as it panned out as that.
Nigel, do you want to come in?
Yeah, well, I can assure members that a proper equality impact assessment will be done for the cabinet report, and then that actually feeds into the full council so that members can see that. Obviously, it has to be a high level, because that's the way it's done. Because then, in terms of service change, individual equality impact assessments would be done on particular service changes. But we will make sure that it's there, so that's fine. In terms of changes around transformation, again, I'll take in terms of what the panel says around understanding what the full gamut of transformation activity that's taken across, and we'll take that back as something we should reflect on. Sorry, I do apologise. There was another aspect that you raised there, Glenn, which I've just gone completely blank. Yeah, and in terms of it reminds me that in terms of individual transformation activities are subject for reviews by the individual scrutiny panels. In terms of that's how we do change, so that when there are plans for major changes, so for instance, colleagues I know have been aware of what's happening around catering and FM services, and Place Committee have actually done a thorough piece of work around that change, and will continue to review how that changed, and that's a major piece of transformation activity. So that's an example in terms of how it's done, but not necessarily in terms of overview committee, in terms of full picture. So I get that. So, but in terms of also, Councillor Guffel, you mentioned around ombudsman's reports, and they go to governance and ethics committee, and again, improvement programs do come out of those aspects, so they are reflected again by the various scrutiny panels. I'm thinking here in terms of adult social care, in terms of aspects of improvement of customer care aspects, and also around EHCPs, where there's a major programme of improvement around meeting children's needs around SEND.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah. It links very well from the previous item, doesn't it, with the transformation? The transformation is going all the way through. It's the thread all the way through. Councillor Carr, did you want to?
I just need to come back and say that the Councillor Kate mentioned about people not running away. My experience as an independent just lately is when I go up to somebody outside and say, the leaflet for you, they'll say, well, what party are you from? And I'll say I'm independent. And they'll say, yeah, because if you were Labour Conservative, I'll tell you where to get off, and that's in Leafy Bramcote. Okay. But anyway, and also I'd just like to remind you, Councillor, that there were very few Labour activists left in Broxton.
Okay, let's get back to this meeting, shall we? Thank you. Okay, right. So we've got a couple of recommendations from that.
Yeah.
Everyone's that's it. Yeah. Everyone's happy.
It.
So we're just going to sum up what.
So I've got everything down because what will happen that all the kind of like the comments with regards to the budget, we'll put those into a document. They'll then go to the cabinet member, who will then provide a response, and they'll be included on the cabinet agenda when that's published next week. I think more generally about the equality impact assessment, that members will find that useful. That they were considered by scrutiny as relevant here. I think that's something we can take forward and discuss with officers when reports are being prepared.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you for it. Oh, it's not. Sorry, anyone against? Any abstentions? So it's not yet. Francis, okay. Okay, thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 6. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Paul Martin. I'm going to ask Richard Jackson, the Cabinet Member for Finance, to introduce, or do you want to go straight to Paul? Or it's up to you. So I'm going to welcome Paul Martin, who's the Head of Technology and Digital, to introduce the report and talk us through it. Thank you, Colin and Derek. Has Melanie gone as well? Right. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully this will be a bit of light relief for the audience. I've got a few slides just to go through on this subject, and this is about where we are on AI.
Some quiet, please. Thank you.
Yep. I was going to put on a Cyberdyne Systems slide here, but it's copyrighted, so I couldn't. So I've just put a head with 2 cogs in there. I thought I would give a bit of context about why this has become such a big subject over a short period of time. So around 2023, ChatGPT released a free version of their software such that the public could start to use it, and that generated a huge amount of interest. And it's basically using large language models and foundation models plus machine learning in order to interpret speech and also text. And that then was a game changer in terms of how it could start to produce its own content. So it was becoming not just AI in terms of being able to understand things and work through processes, but also generative. It could generate unique content from data. That costs them around $700,000 a day. But in terms of a marketing exercise, it's probably been one of the most successful marketing exercises you'll ever come across, because all of a sudden it went from virtually zero to everyone being interested in it in a very, very short space of time. Generative AI is not the only AI. You've got AI which is already embedded in some processes where you've got chatbots and the like, so you can do scripting that can produce human-like response, although that's not quite as sophisticated as some of the generative AI technologies. And it can really help in terms of removing drudgery. So when you're taking notes or you're having to analyse long documents, it can support humans in that process. And it can also support colleagues who maybe struggle with the technology, because it can make things easier in terms of interpretation of documents, and there are quite a number of solutions currently being developed to support people understanding documents which might sit on a website but that they can't get to grips with because they don't have particularly good either language skills or understanding. So there are some advantages of the technology as well. So where have we got to? We started using a thing called Microsoft 365 Copilot in October 2023. We were part of an early adopters program. What that is, it sits within the suite of Office products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and also Teams. And we deployed, over the period of about 6 to 9 months, we deployed 300 licenses for people to trial, because no one quite knew how this stuff was going to work. It was very, very new. We over the period of time, we repatriated 70 of those licenses because they just weren't being used, and we redeployed them into other areas, because we're always experimenting here to try and find out where is it going to give us the biggest benefit. Tend to find that the transcription and summarization of formal meetings and supervisions are areas that it's useful in, but it's also one of the areas that we're focusing on right now are things like education, health and care plans, the production of them from multiple sources, and also, as I mentioned previously, supervisions, which can take a significant period of time to write up. For not getting savings out of this is quite difficult. So this stuff costs money. So in order to pay for it, we have to make savings, and that has been a challenge. So when we moved to a charging model to departments, the number of licenses being deployed reduced from 300 to 100. Now that is increasing gradually, but that gives you an idea of the scale of the challenge to try and identify where you're going to make significant savings. And if I just put it in really simple terms, if you're going to pay £100, you want to make 200. You don't want to be paying £100 and making 90 back. That's not really working for you. So it's that sort of thing that we're trying to work the way through. There's some challenges. We did try to do chatbots. We were told they were going to be really simple back in October 2023, and also redactions. They proved really, really difficult to do. Today, that is easier, but at the time, that was a significant challenge, and we're revisiting chatbots and looking to deploy them internally, having gone through this sort of learning process. The technology is moving really, really quickly. We work with Microsoft in the main. They are issuing new releases of software and functionality every 90 days. And that gives you an idea of the scale of the investment that's going into this stuff. So what we've done is we've deployed 100 licenses, but we've also created, through the auspices of finance colleagues and Richard, a little pot of money where we can trial things for 4 to 6 months to see if they're going to actually work. And then we can deploy the licenses and they start paying for them after that 4 to 6 months. I've already said this, summarizations, transcriptions, and document creation are the main strengths of M365 Copilot, but there are other Copilots. So you've got a number of, I think there's something in the order of 12 different or more Copilots. So there's all sorts of different technologies, and we need to be quite clear about what's going to make the biggest difference for us as we move forward. We are replatforming the Mosaic application, which is our social care platform, and we're also upgrading our SAP platform, which is BMS. They are already building AI functionality into those products. So as we do that, what we want to guard against is replicating that functionality internally, because we're going to get that once we move to those line of business applications. So we just need to be sighted on that as we move forward, and we're talking that through with the suppliers. I've been doing IT jobs for 42 years. I know I don't look that old, but I have been doing them for 42 years. This is like the same as every other technology. We need to map out the processes first and then establish how the technology can be layered to the best advantage. And that is the same as it's always been since I've been doing this job. It's just that the technology is a bit cleverer than it used to be. So we'll need to make sure we understand how we interact with the citizens and look at that end-to-end work process such that we automate it in an appropriate way for the citizen. We'll also need to comply with data, technical and security architecture. So there are malicious actors out there who are already using AI to try and attack us. we will need to use AI in order to defend us, and that's something that we're already exploring today. And again, if we need to automate things as we move forward, as we move into this new world that was spoken about earlier of LGR, we will need to be in a position of being able to automate processes which are typically very, very straightforward to automate because they work on a decision tree basis. So if you think about things relating to council tax, housing benefits, etc., that lends itself because it's a very much a yes/no answer to that type of thing. And then if you can't get an answer, you pop out to a human. But we would need to have that sort of infrastructure in place because all the other authorities in that space will be moving towards this type of software. Questions?
Thank you very much, Paul. Just before I open it up for a debate, I'm going to move recommendations after a second.
Seconded.
Thank you. Councillor Carr first, please.
Thank you, Chair. As somebody who's watched all 4 Terminator films, I never thought I'd be sat here in the council talking about AI, but it's a bit different. I hope it's a bit different, what we're talking about here. I'm very belatedly become quite tech savvy. I can even use my phone to pay for things now, which I find absolutely astounding. But my wife's always been going on at me over the last few months about something called, and it was on there, ChatGPT, not to be confused with GB News. And she said, look, you just say something into it and it'll give you an answer. So I thought, well, I might be able to use this for today's debate. So I asked it, why should local authorities use AI for council services? And it came back and it said, I wrote it down here, all council services improves efficiency, accuracy, accessibility and cost saving, which was good. But I thought, I'll ask it why we shouldn't be using AI. And it said, AI running council services can lead to a lack of empathy and fairness. So I was amazed that you can do this. To be honest with you, it's an amazing tool. So yes, it'd be great if we can improve efficiency, accuracy, accessibility, but not at the cost of empathy and fairness. So how do we ensure that we do it and retain empathy and fairness without causing complete destruction of humankind?
Paul, do you want to come back?
Thanks, Councillor Catlett.
So I'll be back.
The thing you have to bear in mind is that at the moment the technology is at its formative stage. So the way that we provide services, it is unlikely that you're going to allow it to be autonomous. You're going to have some form of human oversight. And even when we're talking about EHCPs and also supervisions and producing notes from that, there is human oversight that's required as well. And if you look at all the software companies, they reinforce the fact that you need human oversight. And again, when you've got some sort of process that is hierarchical, when it can't answer, the thing it needs to do there is push out to a human. And we'd also look at what's appropriate. So when I was speaking to someone who used to run Virgin Media's call centre, the one thing that they said is, where you're dealing with debts, that needs to be dealt with by a human. Yeah. So, and it's that sort of thing. We need to take a balance of what's appropriate and how do we implement the technology. But the technology's here, it's not going anywhere, and it's something that we do need to start embracing and establishing how we best use it within the council.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, my question sort of ties into that. It's partly answered it about the oversight, but my concern is about whether it's actually giving recommendations or giving instructions, and depending what what that particular function is at the time, what it's doing, how can it be challenged, and what processes do we have in, or will we have in place that would question a decision of an AI or a recommendation? And that's where my problem comes, is actually deciding on the term and where that oversight, if you like, is. So that's my concern when it is operating, because I think it will. I mean, I think that's a given; it's going to happen. what processes do we have in place to make sure it's working okay, to be challenged by us or by the person, company, or whatever that's receiving that AI suggestion, stroke recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Cream. At the moment, we're not looking to deploy it where it makes decisions. So what it's doing is it's effectively supporting humans in being more efficient. So if you produce summarization of notes, you produce those notes, they then have to be reviewed by somebody because the software currently hallucinates. And if you've got poor data, it hallucinates in a worse fashion. So I don't think we would be in a position to allow that software to be autonomous. In time, and how soon that will be, I have no idea. That could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. You will have autonomous bots, but we will have had to gone through a long process of it educating itself and proving that it can perform better than a human. Now, if you look at things like, and I'll flip into breast cancer screening, they use AI to do breast cancer screening. It is more, it picks out people in that position in a much earlier stage than it would do using humans. But it still pushes out to a human to then look at the actual case itself, and then they undertake the appropriate examinations. I can't see at this moment in time that we've moved down the position of it being able to make decisions. And when it does, I suspect that's going to have to come back here or back to full cabinet, because I can't see you doing that without full oversight of it.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, AI is definitely an interesting tool to be deployed. And what I want to ask around is, uniquely in our industry, which is highly politically charged environment, what check balances are in place to ensure that the system does not become politically biased? A lot of the software that's been tested, particularly during the US election campaign, was found to answer certain questions in a way that was leading down to a specific political party or bunch of ideology. I can't say can't say that. Thank you. Ideology. And as a result of that, and like I said, specifically in this environment, what work is being put in to ensure that as we start to take on more and more responsibilities of AI within our operating systems and within our processes, that is then going to be checked. My suggestion personally would be that we had a scrutiny function that specifically looked at sample documents across the entire board of the council in all areas to ensure that those documents were being outputted in a non-political bias way, where all representatives of all parties would be included on that. The fear is an obvious one, that you could end up driving the programmer's initial thoughts, aspirations, as a way of making decision making in the long term. So I want to know what thoughts have been put into that, what steps we're taking. Obviously, a lot of this discussion here is about how we keep a check on it, and I think that's rightly so. But this specific area that is so important in a council and the elected representatives of the public, we cannot have a system dictating to those representatives an ideology. There we go, got it. Of a specific programmer's initial thought process. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can you answer that?
I can. So the algorithms themselves can have bias in them because they are written by humans, but that bias, it's not straightforward to try and put in some form of political bias. I think that would be quite a challenge for someone to do that. These things, you run the programs through at least five large language models to try and achieve that level of sophistication at this stage. I suspect would be quite a challenge for anybody. The other thing to bear in mind is that we're running these models on data that we hold. We're not running it. We've got the option in Edge to either use an internal version of Copilot or external. If you go external, you're looking at the internet, and that's got all sorts of stuff in there, and it will come back based on all the responses will come back based on all that sort of stuff. But internally, it's based on council's data. and then it's reviewed. So at this stage, I suspect it would be quite challenging for someone to put that sort of bias in. That's not to say they couldn't, but it would be quite challenging. I don't know whether we've got the bandwidth to scrutinise every single paper for that sort of thing. I suspect you don't. But in due course, when the tooling comes out, if that starts to become an issue, I can almost guarantee you that the market will provide tooling to start reviewing documents to say, okay, you can check for bias.
Yeah, you can come back.
Just momentarily. I mean, I would, like I said, sample documents. I would not for a second suggest that we start trawling through every single thing we're creating, but I think you need to be taking a sample document forward from each process of this and having it analysed by somebody that, you know, ideally by a member from each group to look through it. I don't think we should leave that sort of thing to chance, is my own opinion. I don't think we should suggest that our own data doesn't carry some bias in some way sometimes, unless we are dealing with raw numbers, raw figures. I think that would, because obviously the bias is created by the person that writes the document rather than by the document itself. So if we are dealing with just numbers and figures, I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. In terms of the fact that we're dealing with what is, well, that's figures unless they're projections, of course. And again, then we're looking at something else. But in terms of the political side of things, I would absolutely, in fact, I would go as far to say insist on the fact that we have some sort of political measuring within this process as far as using AI within the context of this council. Thank you.
I suppose my only other observation would be that can happen now. So it's no different from how we are now. Bias can get into documents if people are writing them, and we're talking about potentially people coding large language models, and they may put biases in there and they may not. So I can't see that being different from as we are today. There will be bias in documents because people write them as you highlight. So I'm not quite sure how you'd use technology, or whether scrutinising the documents any more than you do would pull out any more bias. But that would be for the committee to decide.
Just, sorry, one more tiny thing. Just on that, the difference is one is a machine and one is a human being, and that's the difference. We can go to Dave in, I don't know, chair assurance, let's say, and we can ask Dave specifically about that, and you know, we can have a conversation with him. We can't have a conversation with the machine. So my question would be, you know, that's the difference. One's automated, one isn't. Let's make sure that debate is open and honest from the start.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I'm going to Councillor Fole.
Okay, thank you. I think, thank you. This is really interesting, and I must confess, like everybody, possibly, I think getting your head around this is quite tough. I mean, the first thing to say to you is that certainly, kind of some of the stuff that I've learned over the years, and certainly my university days, there is always cultural bias. You cannot, if humans are involved, there is cultural bias, and it may not be obvious, but actually, if you, from a cumulative point of view, it will always have impact. I think if we ignore that or don't accept that, then I think we're in trouble of this kind of extra stuff. And I think it's exciting, and I think it could do some really good stuff. The example you chose around breast cancer, fabulous. I mean, that clearly that would kind of impact, but that seems quite clear cut. But relatively recently, I mean, I had a situation whereby a resident rang me really in a very kind of difficult situation, because a family situation had changed. She was a young adult, and she'd been taken out of her family, kind of put in away in a different residential care, and she was very, very upset. And that is a kind of situation, I think, really where the empathy point comes in, that Councillor Carr just said. I think that's absolutely point well made. It's got to have some sort of empathy, and if we rely too much on it, and of course the complexity, I would have thought the complexity of what's going on. If most of us don't understand this, I think most of us will, what risks do they bring? And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it, but I think if we're not realistic to the fact that actually this could potentially be dangerous, and understand those risks properly and accept them and take them on board. I mean, particularly, you know, the data, for example, will include things like phone numbers and addresses and possibly photographs as well. I mean, so there's a privacy argument as well here, but I think there's a broader argument as well, is how we keep this data safe, how we make sure it's used for the reasons that we want them to be used for, to provide a better service for our residents. I think again, as Councillor Adams has said, we've got to watch that kind of bias, because there will always be, where humans are concerned, there will always be a danger of bias. Thank you.
Seems to be a common theme, doesn't it?
Well, so I think I've covered the bias one, hopefully. The privacy one, we tend to, the way we're running the software at the moment is you would run that internally only on data that you have access to. So you cannot access other people's data. The minute we start moving into broader AI, where it can access back office systems, we would have to undertake a DPIA, data protection impact assessment, and make sure that's covered off. In terms of empathy, yes, I think you're right. I think at the moment the software isn't particularly empathetic, and you probably wouldn't use it in those scenarios currently. However, I know that empathy engines have been written, so it can, when you're on the phone, it can actually tell you this person's getting angry, this person's upset, this person's cheerful, etc., and it will start to map through how you are, and it's ever so accurate. So I think at some point that will come, but we're not there. So I think rather than concerning ourselves about that, which we will do once we enter into it, we need to think about the basics of how do we make sure we support our workforce to do their job more efficiently, because those things will come, but we'll tackle them when they come, if you see what I mean.
So thank you, and I think the more we learn about this, I think perhaps the more I don't know, I think the calmer we'll be, the more we understand it. But at the moment, I think we have some very serious concerns, and I think thank you, you've answered them very well. Thank you.
Councillor Purdy-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very pleased to share that I'm encouraged that Mr. Martin is not actually involved in creating a new Skynet. I would have been a bit suspicious a year ago, but over the last 6 months, particularly, I've seen the effects of human error with the administration of Send, for example, a particularly acute issue this week, where an individual was encouraged to communicate with a staff member of Notts County Council who was deceased for two or 3 months. Very unfortunate. The point I'm making is that I don't think we should ourselves be biased towards, perfect human activity. There is human error, and I think the development of AI over the future will hopefully reduce the possibilities of these issues that crop up every now and again.
Thank you, Paul. You'll get used to this. There's a question there.
It's, I would concur with that, actually. I think if you look at some of I spoke to a consultant back in October 2023 who does deal with breast cancer, and he was one of the first people in the country to use AI to pick breast cancer up early. And his view was that wasn't the biggest win. His view was that the biggest win is that they would get consistency throughout the country. Because at the moment things are done by different people and they do things differently. And bringing consistency then enables that to be dealt with in a much better fashion moving forward. And I suspect this is what will happen with AI. At the moment, everyone's I'm not quite sure about it. I think it will make mistakes. Yes, it will make mistakes, but it does have learning models in it, and those learning models will improve. That doesn't mean we should be sanguine, because I think we do need to be careful about how we deploy it and where we deploy it. But you can do that. You can pilot the stuff. You can make sure it's doing what it should be doing. You can monitor it and you can report on it. And that is like every other technology we've ever used. So, as I said earlier, I think that's map the processes out, establish how the technology can support those processes, deploy it, monitor it, and check it. Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah. thanks, Paul, for all the meetings that we've had actually on it, and I am getting to sort of. I think it is one of those things where it takes time to sink in about what it can do and the possibilities. I was just looking at the feedback from the team manager in adult social care and the things that they were saying and how useful it seems that they've sort of found. Also, the opposite side on the other one where it's found that really probably needs a little bit more work on. But I think the issue on empathy in this one, it sort of went on to say that Copilot was used to soften the tone of an email. And sometimes the written word can be worse than the verbal way in which things get put over. And I think that looked really good, and said that the result was really more impressive. I don't know what the situation was, but clearly it probably had to be dealt with it being Ash, some sensitivity, and the fact that Copilot had picked that up, I think is really good. From a selfish point of view, I just wondered if there was anything that, while you're looking at that could help improve the way that members work, and if there was anything that could enhance the way we work within the community and could assist us. I should hate to think it'd hallucinate and think it was a Tory. As long as we, but if there was anything as you're going through that you'd think, well, actually that'd be useful for members to try, in helping us with our role with our constituents. I just wonder if just throw that one in.
Could I pick that one up to respond to that one? Because I think you make a really good point, Cliff, in terms of where we could help in terms of deploying this sort of technology for everybody, and that's including the members. And we did this, I'm going back some time now, in terms of when we started with smartphones and technology, and we did this, I know Richard helped tremendously in terms of it when he was the business manager for the group, in terms of where we could do multiple, the same device, but where you're a twin hatter, in terms of where you could get the. So there's nothing wrong with this. Picking up with a group of members, particularly with like the business manager's view, in terms of trying to see where we may find some of the benefits and some of the deployments of this technology. Because as we've been doing, we've been pushing it out and asking colleagues to learn, because they don't know where they could use it. So as long as we could do this in a sort of like guinea pig type approach with members, why not? So I think we'll be up for that.
That's all members. Johnny, you've sat very quietly at the back there. Just, I'll indulge you as a chairman and say if you've got a question,
thank you,
as a member or a.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. As most of our members will know, I use AI a lot. I'm dyslexic, so I use it a lot, and I've used lots of different systems. And it actually is shocking me that most of you are asking questions of stuff that I do regular. So I'm going to let you into a little bit of a secret. Probably I shouldn't be sharing with the opposition, but I've always been ahead of the time when it comes to social media. I was ahead of the time, and when it comes to AI, I'm very much ahead of the time. Example. Councillor Perdue-Horam said something at the beginning of the meeting about me being a hokey-cokey councillor. What I could do in a meeting, and I've been criticised for being on my phone a lot, is I'm constantly cross-matching what people are saying to policies, to written reports. So, example, I will come to a meeting and I already have the report loaded up to an AI system. And when somebody is saying something, I am then cross-matching to what they are saying to the report. It will tell me if it's in the report and if it's correct to the report. It can also cross-match any other policies and reports that I have already written up and cross-match that. And it will tell me, so example, with what Francis Perdue-Horam said, it might say something along the lines is Francis Perdue-Horam has been a member of the Liberal Democrats and kicked out the Conservative Party. It would also cross-match the reports and the articles and the articles in the newspapers and tell me where that information was. So it would tell me the information. Now, back in the day, about 2 years ago, it never used to do that. It never used to show you the articles or the information, but now it does. So you can check and you can cross-match. The Copilot and ChatGPT are very different. Copilot is very much it. So, example, if I'm using Copilot and you've sent me an email. Example, a really complicated email, and I just want to say, yeah, that's great, happy with that. I'll put that into Copilot. It will then take the information that you've put in, it will layer that into my reply with your name. I can also put in brackets, and you have to learn how to use it, but you can put in brackets, be polite, be courteous, and then it will take what I've said. And I'm more than happy to sit down with any of you and show you. When I show my colleagues what I can do, they're actually shocked. It will then put it into a polite thing, and Copilot only really uses the information available. ChatGPT is very different. If you give me a policy, I can tell ChatGPT to double check, confirm with that policy. So, example, something that Francis Berger-Horam said is, I've never been a member of any other political party, never. It would, and if I was to put that in ChatGPT, it would tell me that and give me the facts and the figures. So when I at the last full council meeting where I was criticised by the independents for being on my phone, is I'm able to cross match exact policies. What's really good with being out and about. So if I have a message, example, I have a pothole message and I want to put a message out, is I can actually get the ChatGPT to aim that at certain individuals. It will give me 10 abilities. It will say, if you're going towards older people, you might want to put it in this aspect. Younger people, put it in that aspect. Do this and do that. I'm letting you into all my secrets now, but I've always been ahead of my time. And what it does is you have to understand how to program it. And that's something that you have to learn how to do. So where to put the brackets, how to explain it, what you want to do. And over time and over years, it will learn how you do things and what you do. So example, when I'm writing an email, I won't use people's names. I always use initials. I will add the names, the details afterwards. When I paste and copy it across to an email format, I'll then add all the personal information. But I can tell the AI system, example, sign up all my emails with my information. I'll say Google Councillor John O'Leary, Nottinghamshire County Council, and it will search up-to-date phone numbers and emails, and it'll automatically input that in. What is really good, and the best thing that I've probably learned the AI systems for, is it will cross-match the policies. So example, if I'm in a meeting and an officer has told me something very quickly, I can cross-match what they've told me to any old policies, the policy that's in front of me, and it will also search other councils and tell me if other councils have done the same or if they've gone in a different direction. And I can check that within 10 seconds. And then you will see me on my phone constantly in meetings, I'm cross-matching things. However, you have to take in consideration, and I won't say which one because I don't want to be sued, is they do lie, and they have been known to lie. And you've got to be really careful that you are cross-matching, and any information it gives you, make sure it's giving you the references so you can check them yourself.
Thank you, John, for sharing your experience. Yeah, and we'll never be shocked by you, I'm sure. More amazed. Councillor Carr.
Just say, I'll check everything I said about ChatGPT if it's saying that Councillor Berger-Horam was a Liberal Democrat.
Okay, thank you. Paul, you come back, please. Yeah.
Could come back to that. It's what you're talking about. There's a thing called prompt engineering. So this is going to be a skill moving forward. You're going to see jobs advertised for prompt engineers, and this is people who construct prompts for the AI engines in order to produce something. And I think that's what we're talking about here. And it's something that you need to learn if you're going to use. When you're asking an inquiry of an AI engine, what you're putting in there is a prompt. So you'll hear that term a lot. There was one other. Oh yeah, it doesn't lie. It hallucinates, and the reason it hallucinates is because it responds to you on the basis of data that it's got access to. If that data is incorrect, it's going to respond to you, but it's not human, so it's not lying because it doesn't know what that means. If you see what I mean, it doesn't. It's not inbuilt within the AI engine. I think we need to be careful of using the lying word because it's not trying to mislead. It's just presenting what it's found, and that can change. So you can ask it a question now, and you can ask it a question tomorrow, and it gives you two different answers because new data's come up and it's found it.
Councillor Butler.
Surely, though, isn't it all dependent on what a human puts into it in the first place, with regards to information that comes out? I mean, I years ago I used to be tech savvy, but I realise I've got to an age now where I've sort of lost the plot with CDs and mini discs. So I'm behind the times. But it's not a question really. But the main thing is whatever the future of this is, I hope we just do not lose focus of the fact that at the end of the day we're here to be providing services to the public and businesses, and how I'm sure we've all experienced in today's AI phoning up for whoever, not to the council, but companies or whoever, and you're pulling your hair out when it's not understanding what you're saying and all the rest of it. So whilst I'm a big fan of it, I know times have to move forward, but let's just not lose focus as to ultimately sort of we don't want anything that might accidentally cause problems, and as was picked out, it can sometimes misread transcripts and all the rest of it. So it talks about excitement in this, but let's not get too excited, in my view.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll stick to my VHS then. Paul, do you want to come back and answer that?
Yeah, I think that is you're right. What you put in it, that's the whole skill of prompt engineering, and you learn that over time. And if you are going to engage with this stuff, you will have to think about what you're asking. Simple things like, I don't know if it still does this, but what used to happen is as you put in your prompt in, we would see the sequence of putting things in. The thing you put in first is the thing you're most interested in. Not for the AI engine. The AI engine is the last thing you put in is the thing that it focuses on the most. Now they've edited that, but for the last year, that's how it's worked. So all that sort of understanding needs to be in there as you start to craft what you ask it, and then the data it accesses responds back to that prompt. Brave new world.
Thank you. Francis, do you want to come back with one thing?
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, point of clarification.
You weren't a Liberal Democrat.
My fact-checking team have been using AI to check out the Deputy Leader's comments earlier in item 5. And whilst it may be true that the previous administration agreed in principle to support the Scrooby Stone, the funding was approved by the Conservative administration in 2022.
Thank you. Okay. AI, amazing. Okay.
He wanted to disassociate himself from it.
Okay. So the recommendations have been moved and recommendations have been moved and seconded. Have we got any further?
Yeah,
I think a few things there.
I think from the discussion, I think it's something that members are interested in. I think we need to look at how we keep members up to date with what's going on, because, like I say, as the chair said and other members have said, it is something you do get more used to the more you hear about it. And also some consideration how the members can be engaged in some potential work of how it can actually support members in delivering their member role. So that's what's come from that. So I think it's kind of like, this isn't the first time we'll be talking about this.
Okay, so thank you, Paul, for that. And for members that couldn't make the presentation before Christmas, was it? Yeah, I found it very interesting. It doesn't, and certain AI doesn't understand the Derby accent. Well, that was. Yes, I thought that was quite good. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All in favour? That is unanimous this time, isn't it? Yeah, did it right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Paul, Richard, Lucy. Okay, now we go to the outcomes of the scrutiny review. That's myself to introduce, and I'd welcome. But before I bring you in, Michelle, I'll just do a little preamble, and then
If any questions to Michelle.
So the report presents the findings and recommendations from the Overview Committee's review of the delivery of the Blue Badge Scheme in Nottinghamshire. The Blue Badge Scheme is a vital service that supports individuals with severe mobility issues, both visible and hidden, by enabling them to park closer to their destinations. Recognising the importance of this scheme, we carried out this review to ensure the application process is as user-friendly and accessible as possible, especially since the transition to an online-only application system. Our review process was comprehensive, involving detailed discussions with key stakeholders, including the Commission Services team. We examined the current application procedures, assessed the challenges faced by residents, and explored potential further improvements to streamline the process and enhance customer service. The report outlines several recommendations aimed at further improving the Blue Badge application experience for residents. These include maintaining the pilot activity that supports vulnerable badge holders, exploring the benefits of automated communication updates, and enhancing engagement with community groups to assist residents who may struggle with the online application process. I would like to extend my thanks to all members of the review group and the officers. This was the most well attended review so far, and it was very inclusive. Marie Rowney, Michelle Thorpe, and Louise Blant Harwood, who contributed to this review. The commitment and expertise of these officers in delivering the best possible service to residents and who constantly striving to deliver further service improvements was clear throughout the review process, and I'd like to thank them for their work and supporting for the review process. I'd like to move the recommendations. Seek a second.
Seconded.
Okay.
Any comments, any questions?
I'm going to open it up for questions, and Michelle's here. So welcome, Michelle Thorpe. And open it up now. Okay. So,
Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Carr.
Chair, I was at the first meeting of this, and it was a very useful meeting. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the second, but everything we discussed is in here from that first meeting. And it soon became apparent to us that we actually have an absolutely fantastic Blue Badge service in the county. I mean, the time it takes us to get a new badge out is hugely shorter than a lot of neighbouring authorities, for example, who you're talking some of them 16, 18, 20 weeks to turn it round, which is unacceptable. But one thing I think we picked out was, because Councillor Saddington was on the working party as well, was that Councillor Saddington, as we know, has got a condition that's always going to be there. My wife, who's got a blue badge, has rheumatoid arthritis, which is already going to be there. And the recommendation 5 on page 76 is that we're basically trying to get somebody to accept that people with conditions that they're not going to recover from, why do they continually have to reapply? And I think that, if anything, I think that's really an important role. Also, the fact that we've taken the initiative and we have actually started, and for a while now, actually emailing more vulnerable people when it's coming up to the expiry of their disability card, and that's a good way forward. So I have to, whilst it was great that we've come to scrutiny, because we have picked some points out like that specific, but the actual workings of the department was never in question. That it's efficient, and that wasn't the reason why we were scrutinising it.
Sorry, turn the mic. Just take Councillor Creamer's question or comment, and we'll come to you.
Yeah, go along with everything that Chris, Steve, where I go from, just said. It was really, really good. The department, fantastic. The speed it's been done at. The recommendations. I mean, what I'm going to go to mainly is recommendation 9 as well, was that we actually sell our service because it's such an excellent service. We try and sell it to the other councils as well, and we wouldn't have made that recommendation unless we were happy with how it was being dealt with in the first place. So, again, many thanks to the staff, and we also recognise some of the problems they've actually got as well with national legislation and guidelines which they have to follow, and we're also quite happy to actually turn around and actually contact MPs and ask for legislation to change, because some of it will have to change to help us. But these things I didn't realise just how tied in it was with both the national regulations and their own. Yeah. So that was useful in itself. So yes, I think this has been very useful both for us and for the general public. For this public report, when it's public now, is actually extremely useful, because it does explain the intricacies of how to get the problems, and the speed that we actually do it is unbelievable, as Steve has already said. It's more than twice, 3 times, it's not even longer than some other authorities. So again, thanks to the staff, and thanks to their participation in it as well.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Yes, I would also echo those comments about the service in general and the help we get from the staff, and it's sort of touching on our previous subject about the way people apply for blue badges. I know that the encouraged way is to apply online, and I absolutely accept and understand that. But we are a truly flexible and good authority in the fact that for those members of the community who, for whatever reason, are unable to apply online, are able to apply by telephone, and I've had from in my area, I've had people, completely unsolicited comments from people who have applied and on the phone and have been absolutely, truly impressed and grateful for the swift, efficient service that they get. So I just want really just to acknowledge and reflect that they do a really good job.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Michelle, would you like to come?
Yeah, I'd just like to express our thanks from the team and myself for the acknowledgement of the work that they do. In the report, it said knowledge and passion, and that is exactly what the team is. We welcome all the recommendations. We're always looking for ways to innovate and move forward. So we'll be interested to do them all and take the service forward and make it even better. Interestingly, in a timely manner for today, I was in a DFT meeting yesterday, and the highest local authority out there is currently working at 6 months, and we quote 6 weeks and are currently working at 4. So that acknowledgement of the time that we're processing is fantastic, and it was very warmly welcomed by the team, so thank you.
It's brilliant. That's commendable. So thank once again from myself and the rest of the members. Congratulations and thank you. The recommendations have been moved and seconded. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we move to agenda item 8. It's the work programmes.
Yeah, the work programmes on there. On overview, there haven't been any changes. That's as it's been for a while. There's been a few little changes on the other committees, just moving around, just for like an agenda management point of view. Just to note the normal things, keep your eye on the forward plan. If there's anything on the forward plan that you're interested in or think could be a relevant item for scrutiny, let myself and the chair know. And that's it, really. And any comments as usual, just myself and the chair, and we'll see if it can be incorporated or put down as an item to be considered in future years.
Councillor Fole.
So this is going to sound kind of very joined up, but I believe at Place Committee yesterday there was something discussed that Penny Gowland raised, and she said it suggested it went on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was now. But can you recall? If not, I'll go back and ask her. But just in case it was in your head, that she was told that actually it wasn't appropriate to discuss it at Place; it needed to go to Overview and Scrutiny.
I think the only thing that I can think of, there was questions that it didn't come from Councillor Gowan, but obviously she was part of the discussion. There was questions about the insurance claims for dash and poles. Even though it's obviously you think highways, it's like legal and finance that would deal. So if there's any concerns about that, it would come here. But we did send out about a year ago. We did send out like a briefing note to members. So like I said, and I think I said at the time, we can request that like an updated. We do that again so that members can get a bit further information, then they can help them consider if it's something they want to look at in more detail.
Yes, thank you. If that could go on the work programme, that would be helpful. Thank you for remembering.
Consider that. Thank you very much. Your meeting now closing. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, we need to vote on the work. Yeah. All in favour of the work programme? Yeah. Good. Yeah. Done.
Lovely.